Number 10. Sisterhood of the Sleight Hand. Sisterhood of the Sleight Hand has only made a few appearances in the comics, so they're not as much of a superhero team as they are, I guess, a collective of witches, but I feel like most of the witches are good among them, or at least neutral, so I figured it would be safe to count them. Also, I believe in general as a group they're a force of good, so even those that are part of the group that aren't as good, the whole group is supposed to be good, okay? Prominent but still somewhat obscure members include Tracy 13, Enchantress, Manitou Dawn, and Witchfire. I love Witchfire. When will I get my Witchfire series? And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any good old nerdy content? I know there's a lot of people out there that don't subscribe, so if that's you, I'm talking to you. Number 9. Justice League Dark. Everyone's heard of the Justice League, but who the heck is Justice League Dark? And why do they sound like they're a supervillain team? Well, while their name might make them sound like they are up to no good, the opposite could not actually be more true. They are a more covert division of the Justice League, actually, an offshoot that primarily works in the shadows to help stop more unseen magic threats. In fact, when they saved the universe from Hecate's influence, the Justice League wasn't even aware of what was going on at the time, because Hecate just didn't want the Justice League to be aware of her, so they simply just weren't. And that was a threat to the entire universe, friends. They deal with threats that the Justice League honestly might be ill-equipped to face, and one of their members is actually a core member of the JLA team, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman initially acts as a team leader, and the team has included Zatanna, John Constantine, Detective Chimp, Dr. Fates, both Khalid Nazur, and also for a little while Kent Nelson, Madame Xanadu, Animal Man, Dead Man, Ragman, all the men, really, Etrigan and Jason Blood, and a slew of others who are more magically inclined. It's a big list, but that's some of them. Number 8. Exiles. The Exiles are probably the most potentially well-known of the ones that I've listed here, but if you are new to comics or more of a casual fan, this one for you will probably be something that you don't know about, which is why I put it here, because I want you to know. For those who don't know the Exiles, they're a super cool team with a long ongoing series. They're actually a multiversal superhero team made up of various alternate versions of superheroes from across the multiverse. Because anyone from any other Earth can be a member of the team, there are a lot of people who have been on the roster over the years, members who have come and gone or even died during their time on the team. The very first team to appear though in Exiles, the first roster that appeared in Exiles Volume 1, Issue Number 1 out of 2001, a lot of ones, featured a slew of alternate reality versions of characters, including an alternate version of Blink from Age of Apocalypse reality Earth number 295, Nocturne, the daughter of Scarlet Witch and Nightcrawler in an alternate reality, Thunderbird of Earth 1100, Mimic of Earth 12, an alternate version of everyone's favorite fun-loving mutant Morph from Earth 1081, and an alternate version of Magneto simply known as Magnus from Earth 27. So many cool multiversal folks. Number 7. Blue Lanterns. You've heard of Green Lanterns, maybe you've even heard of Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns or Black Lanterns, but how about Blue Lanterns? Blue Lanterns have only made a few appearances in the new continuity, and even before that, during the New Earth days of DC, they weren't necessarily the most frequent to appear. Mainly, I feel like people know Green Lanterns, whose color represents willpower. To be a Green Lantern, you must be strong in will. To be a Blue Lantern, though, you must be full of hope, strong in hope. If Green Lanterns are like the intergalactic police, Blue Lanterns are kind of like, I guess, the therapists or the peacekeepers, or maybe the priests. That's accurate based on their naming. They have long been allies to the Green Lanterns, and their powers actually provide a boost to fellow Green Lanterns when they are nearby. This is because their whole focus is on belief and hope, having faith in those around them. As such, many of their names start with titles like Saint, Sister, or Brother. Number 6. Hellions. While they were recent, the fact remains that the Hellions were a pretty short-lived team. Now, if you're new to the channel, first of all, hello, welcome in, happy to have you. As I said, click the subscribe. And also, you probably aren't familiar with the Hellions. Those who have been here for a while, regardless of whether they read the book or not, will know the team I'm talking about though, because I do like to talk about them. Sure, there might be many out there who know of Emma Frost's Hellions team in their striking pink suits, but how many know about Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister's Hellions team. Sounds like it should be a villain team again, right? Well, oddly enough, it isn't. This team was made up of the rejected members of Krakoan Mutant Society, who were put together on their own team with the hope of rehabilitating the mutants and helping them to find a place in society, while also allowing more put together mutants to keep a kind of a closer eye on them, I guess. Minus Mr. Sinister, who they did put in charge of this team for some reason. Goodness. This was also at a time where pretty much all mutants were kind of considered to be like good. However, I still feel like letting Sinister run this team was a huge oversight. That is part of the reason that I wanted to read the series though, and I was honestly not disappointed with this series. The team includes Quanon as Psylocke, Havoc, Wildchild, Nanny, Orphan Maker, John Greatcrow, and former Hellion Empath. The team only lasted as long as their series, and afterward they disbanded, and it was really sad. Number 5. Capes Inc. Capes Inc. is another superhero team from the same world as Invincible. In fact, as early on as issue number 8 of the Invincible series, you can see some of their members featured in the background. Not only that, but they also ended up getting their own spin-off comic as well, although I believe it only lasted like a few issues, 3 I think to be exact. The series centered initially around Bolt, who welcomes a new recruit to the team as his partner. The team is more like a business and kind of seems to operate like a superpowered police station or office. It's like Bolt has this partner and they drive around and like fight crime. People even get paid and everything. Kid Thor is the new kid in town who ends up joining with Bolt. Bolt, we learned, originally actually wanted to be known as Black Samson, but obviously that name was already taken by the Guardians of the Globe hero. Oh man, there's just so many little bits in this that are pretty hilarious. Number 4. A-Force. A-Force is a team that I love, but not one that many people talk about, I find. I feel like a lot of people forget that this happened. It's probably because, we haven't seen A-Force in some time. But when they were around, they were pretty great. But also quite short-lived. Even more so than the Hellions. A-Force at least appeared in a few other comics other than their own series, but they had a considerably shorter run for their own series. Despite their team honestly being really stacked and it sounding like, I don't know, just sounded like a really great team. I'm surprised it didn't go longer. Members included She-Hulk, who led the team, Captain Marvel, Dazzler, an alternate reality version of Dazzler who is Thor, Nico Minoru, Singularity, and Queen Medusa. Number 3. God Squad. God Squad was one that I was hoping to see a nod to in Thor Love and Thunder. I was hoping that when we went to Olympus, we might get a peek at some version of this team. Maybe not one for one, but it could have been cool to see the team acknowledged with maybe even a different take on it. I just really love the name, God Squad. This was a group of heroes and gods who were assembled to fight against the Skrull Pantheon, brought together by Athena. The team included Hercules as leader, Circe and Ajax of the Eternals, Thor, Silver Surfer, Galactus, Venus, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, what would that hero be? Just someone that snowboards, I guess. Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Amatsu Mikaboshi, and Adam. Number 2. Justice League Queer. Justice League Queer has made fewer appearances than I have fingers on this here hand. They're less of a superhero group and more of a support group for other prominent superheroes who are queer. And honestly, I kinda love that. Although I'm sure they do still team up and fight crime. But they're also mainly about advocating for LGBTQIA+ rights. This team made their first appearance in the 2021 issue of DC Pride. They also popped up in 2023 DC Pride and in a holiday special as well. The team or group is led by Extraño, a powerful magic-based superhero who was the first out and proud Soup. He created the group to make sure others out there never felt alone as he had initially, and I love it. Number 1. 6. You might have heard of the Krakoan 5, but do you know of the Six? The Six, or just Six, are a team of primarily teleportation-based mutant heroes who were recruited by Abigail Brand to be part of her new mutant-based sword team, when that was a thing. Well, the team is called the Six. There are actually more than 6 members. The Six refers to the core members who are the teleportation-based mutants, while the other members are also integral to the mission statement of the team, which is all about further expansion and exploration of the possibilities of mutant technology. The team has included Abigail Brand, Magneto, Manifold, Armor, Cora of the Burning Heart, WizKid, Peeper, Fabian Cortez, Risque, Gateway, Lila Cheney, Blink, Amelia Vaught, and Vanisher. The team also has backup members on call in case they need to swap folks out as well, especially for teleporters. Which, to be fair, there are a lot of mutant teleporters, so that makes sense.
When we say that these teams deserve better, there really isn't a better example than the Harvesters. After the events of the Superhuman Civil War, Iron Man created the 50 State Initiative, This was essentially an initiative to set up government-funded superhero teams throughout each of the United States. Some of these teams were already established groups of heroes, but for some states, completely new groups composed of local heroes were formed. The Sunflower State, Kansas, gained its team in the form of the Harvesters. This new team was made up of pretty strange heroes that we hadn't seen before. Topeka, who led the team, was basically just a super soldier. Then there was Pioneer, who had the power of the plains, as she put it. Sunflower, who was literally a human sunflower who got stronger under direct sunlight and appeared to have a high degree of durability. There was Meadowlark, who could fly and sing to hypnotize people. And then, of course, there was Grainbelt, whose body was literally made of grain that he could control. Why did they deserve better? Well, this team's only claim to fame came when they faced off against a zombie clone of the hero Hyperion, who is basically the Marvel equivalent of Superman, and he utterly destroyed each member of this team. They did not stand a single chance. Only Pioneer just barely made it out alive by raising up an entire herd of undead cattle and trampling the zombie Hyperion, who then succumbed to mad cow disease, and I wish I made that up. Now, most of you nerds have heard about the Skrulls. This alien race has been a nuisance in Marvel Comics ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four #2. The Skrull members who fought the Four at this time ended up hypnotized into believing they were actually cows by Reed Richards, and they shapeshifted into and were stuck as cows. What I'm sure Reed did not anticipate is that these Skrull cows ended up finding themselves in a butcher and turned into beef. This Skrull beef was then consumed by regular old Earthlings. Now, while a good majority of people did not survive the Skrull cow meat, a select few did, and had the Skrull's adaptable DNA code transferred into their human cells, resulting in a condition called Skrullivoria-induced Skrullophobia. The infected individuals gained the ability to shapeshift like a Skrull, but also developed an intense irrational fear and hatred of the Skrull, and they came together to form the aptly named Skrull Kill Crew. Fueled by their irrational impulses to destroy the Skrull, they helped prevent the Skrulls from attacking other people, but they even faced off against other villains like Baron von Strucker. It's just a really unfortunate way to gain a superpower. Now, X-Force is the awesome Black Ops X-Men related team with characters like Domino and Cable and Cannonball and Wolverine and Warpath, and it's awesome. But for a short little while, it was decidedly not awesome. In the year 2000, X-Force got cancelled and rebranded into what eventually would become X-Statix. This team isn't exactly one of the premier mutant teams in the world, and that's putting it lightly. The original team was made up of the mutants Zeitgeist, who has the power of Super Puke, La Nuit with Dark Force powers, Battering Ram, who was a big purple goat looking man, Plasm, who had liquidy water powers, Gin Genie, who could create earthquakes depending on how much she drank, and Sluck, who was basically a squid man. But all of those original members, minus 3 of them who I didn't mention, and Sluck, who was blown up by a tank in South Africa, all got completely decimated in spectacularly embarrassing fashion during a rescue mission to save a pop music boy band named Boys R Us. Turns out their demise was actually planned by the team's manager, coach, and its leader, Zeitgeist, because they thought a team with a constantly changing roster and high body count would gain them fan interest. The team managed to go on with pretty horrible results. There have been 28 members of Ecstatics who have passed away over their history, with only 9 surviving. 9. Okay, so we have Ecstatics, we have X-Force, we have the X-Men of course, and we have a whole handful of other X-branded teams, but some mutants aren't considered presentable to the outside world because whatever their mutation is, it has been deemed either gross or terrifying by the wider Marvel human society, or they are mutants who are just bitter about being persecuted for being mutants. This group banded together, named themselves the Morlocks, and headed down into the Morlock tunnels beneath New York City. Already, without anything happening to them other than their mutations, these characters have it rough and deserve better. But then, to add flame to the fire, the Morlocks undergo tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, with one of the worst being the event known as the Mutant Massacre, where Mr. Sinister and the Mutant Gambit put together a group of villainous characters and led them into the tunnels to commit, well, a massacre. And it was all because another villain, Dark Beast, created some of these Morlocks, and Mr. Sinister didn't like that. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Putting their heads together, figuratively, not literally, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. The quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, who accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically just had really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head had been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite the versatile little guy. Not gonna lie. The Champions of Los Angeles were the first West Coast-based superhuman team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against a great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of two former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength, Hercules, who I swear is super underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who led the team. After defeating Pluto, the Champions of Los Angeles, or just the Champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the group, and with his money they bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time, the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the entire idea of the team as a whole. Both Iceman and Angel called it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in a scientific aspect, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow but ended up changing sides instead. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda love the lineup of this team. I'd read it if they came back. Now you remember how the Headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throws, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff. The leader, Ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that honestly works really well together, juggling their various different throwing instruments between each other. They worked so well together, in fact, that they were even hired to and succeeded in breaking the villain Crossfire out of prison. However, once they had taken Crossfire to their HQ, they discovered that Crossfire was broke. His assets had all been impounded, and he had lost all of his useful connections. These guys did battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki, of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the Big Top Casino in Las Vegas. Their Marvel Wiki even lists their origins as, and I quote, a joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly can't even believe this group of villains exists and that they haven't been able to get Bullseye into their ranks. What the heck's up with that? Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think that Horticulture may be my favorite. For starters, they look so cool, but then you find out that it's actually just a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it, and it was ruled by plant life. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their ages and interests in plants. We got Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh! What a bunch of winners. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. They did get pretty handily walloped though, so Second to last, as part of kid-centric Star Comics, Marvel decided decided to release a team composed of animal superheroes, which is cool. But the difference here is this team of animal heroes were cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with absolutely massive arsenals and awesome exoskeletons, which is much cooler. And they fought for the environment, which is even cooler. This team was made up of Boomer, a kangaroo, Lionheart, a lion, Soar / Slipstream, an eagle, Reckless, who was a bear, and Dr. Echo / Surfstreak, who was a dolphin. Does it sound kind of ridiculous? Sure, but it is awesome. This team was co-created by Multicore, spearheaded by Dr. Randall Pierce, and it was all part of Weapons 2, which itself was the second project after Weapon 1. Who would have thought? Also known as Project Rebirth, also known as the project that created Captain America. Now, some of you may know that these projects were part of a bigger thing called Weapons Plus, who would eventually go on to create Man-Thing, Luke Cage, Nuke, Typhoid Mary, Phantom X, the Stepford Cuckoos, and of course, Wolverine. So most people know that they aren't exactly a good group of people. While their original series was cancelled after only a few issues in Wolverine and Captain America Weapons Plus #1, those two heroes investigated an abandoned Weapons Plus site where they found the team kept in hibernation tanks full of liquid. The bear, Reckless, was freed from his container but attacked the duo, resulting in his passing. And last up today, first ever introduced in 1989's West Coast Avengers Volume 2 number 46, the Great Lake Avengers formed after Mr. Immortal put out an ad in the local personals seeking men and women of action to join forces and form a team of super friends. This managed to catch the attention of Avengers members Hawkeye and Mockingbird. In order to help them out, the Great Lakes Avengers were trained by the duo, and the rest was history. The team is made up of pretty much Z-list heroes, with the main lineup usually consisting of Mr. Immortal, Doorman, Big Bertha, and Flatman. Naturally, as a sort of running joke throughout Marvel Comics since their introduction, the team goes up against some of the zaniest villains and situations I have ever seen, and they don't do particularly well. But I'll be darned if I don't have a soft spot for this team. The funny thing about most joke characters and teams is that they almost always end up actually doing some pretty extraordinary things from time to time.
Starting off under the water with the Sea Devils. This team was just regular people doing extraordinary things. They appeared in Showcase issue 27 in 1960, but got their own series the next year. The group was made of 4 people: Dane Dorrance, Judy Walton, Judy's younger brother Nicky Walton, and their friend Biff Bailey. The group primarily operated underwater since their job was deep sea diving and treasure hunting. They spent a lot of time living every kid's dream. They fought sea monsters and discovered underwater kingdoms. If I was guaranteed to never drown, I would join this team so quick. The group also fought for the sea on land as environmentalists. They are suggested to maybe be a bit extreme at times with their methods in the New 52 reboot, but they remain allies to Aquaman. The Displaced Paranormals, or DP7, got their powers from the infamous White Event. You could probably guess this from the team name, but there are 7 of them. White Events create new, extremely powerful heroes, and on this particular team, we have a man that can now project an intangible version of himself, a strong man, a speedster, a woman whom whoever she touches would just lose all friction and slide around, a boy who produced acid from his skin, a mom that can energize and heal anyone she touched, and a teacher that could paralyze you with the poison his body produces. The team grew and shrank over time and has had about 40 appearances total. Born out of an atomic fallout, the heroes of Lawler, they are a team of 5 heroes. Their parents lived a bit too close to the site of an atomic fallout, and their genes were altered, resulting in their children all being born with superpowers. The kids were sent away from their home planet and decided to come to Earth. Dr. Marden King lied to the young heroes, making them think that the Legion of Superheroes were criminals. The reason? So Doc could avenge his brother's death. When a random group of space people started to attack the Legion, they also thought the heroes of Lawler were bad guys. They fought, but soon realized they were both fighting with good intentions and became friends instead. The powers of each team member were as follows: Beast Boy, turning into any animal, not to be confused though with the more popular Beast Boy, they're different. Gas Girl, she can change her body into any gas. Evolvo Lad, he can make his body go to any point in human evolution, so he can become like an ape or the kind of man humanity humanity can't even imagine yet. Lifelast can create living creatures from inanimate objects, and finally Duplicate Boy, he can duplicate any hero's superpowers. Eventually the team makes it back to their home planet and even gained a new member, Splitter, or Arm Fall Off Boy. Up next, Operation Lightning Storm, a team that shockingly does not include Thor. It did include one of my favorite superheroes, Sleepwalker, and that is how I know about this obscure team that only has about 16 appearances. The team was led by Miss Marvel. After the events of Civil War, Tony Stark had requested that Carol lead the Mighty Avengers, to which she agreed to do, but only if she got a second team too. This team's purpose was to take out villains before they became an Avengers level threat. The team was a covert strike team that could access any S.H.I.E.L.D. resource they wanted, even though they weren't technically part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. official lineup. Members of the team included Carol Danvers as the leader, Machine Man, Sleepwalker, Agent Sum, Agent Locke, Agent Baines, and Doc Farrell. Notable missions include saving a bunch of kidnapped people in Miss Marvel Volume 2 Issue 20, and then erasing a colony of Brood in Issue 24. The reason this team has very limited appearances is because they captured an imposter Miss Marvel, then upon discovery of being an imposter, she hit self-destruct and took the team's base down with her. Doc Farrell and Agent Baines didn't make it. G-Force is up next, and I do not mean the unit of acceleration. I am instead referring to the 2009 feature film with its central cast being super intelligent spy guinea pigs. Here's the thing, I thought that we were all locked into G-Force. I thought everyone was also living with the knowledge that this wackadoodle movie exists. Imagine my shock and surprise upon being told that this was obscure media. Please, if you knew about G-Force before now, drop that in the comments section. I should do a poll or something. The official plot synopsis for this film, like the one on IMDb, is a specially trained squad of guinea pigs is dispatched to stop a diabolical billionaire from taking over the world. The FBI had a secret division responsible for training and then dispatching the rodents. Shockingly, the FBI decided that spy rodents wasn't a necessity, so they went to shut it down, causing the small spies to begin their hero's journey. Another reason that I thought everyone was well aware of this movie was because it had a star-studded cast. Some of the people in this movie had no business being in a super guinea pig movie. Bill Nye, Will Arnett, Zach Galifianakis, Nicolas Cage, Sam Rockwell, Jon Favreau, Penelope Cruz, Steve Buscemi, and Tracy Morgan all lent their face or voice to the Disney flick. This was also the first live-action Disney film released in Disney Digital 3D that wasn't a concert film, so G-Force literally made history. Ever since discovering another animal team, the Power Pachyderms, they have crossed my mind at least once a week because it was so wild. So they were a team of super elephants. Now here's the thing, it's ridiculous, but that was the point. It was a parody comic of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Later, it was a parody of the X-Men and just general Marvel heroes. The OG team name was the Adult Thermonuclear Samurai Elephants, iconic. However, not everything went to plan. There were some significant delays, and so Marvel was forced to change the name and said they were now a parody of the X-Men. Either way, the team of four first appeared in Power Pachyderms issue 1 in 1989, and that's it. That's all we ever got. The issue itself was a gem. We learned the elephants were supercharged when their train car, bound for the zoo, was unhooked from the train by a monkey, and they happened to jump track to one that leads to a nuclear test zone. Then there's a big explosion that exposes the elephants to radiation, turning them into super elephants. They rejoin the circus briefly before heading off on their own, only to come back together to fight Clarinetto, former head of the Brotherhood of Musicians. The super elephants fight and defeat Clarinetto and his band of celebrity ninja impersonators. It was truly a piece of art. Wetworks, originally called Team 7, was a team published by Image Comics, which was later DC. Wetworks likely got its name from the actual term, meaning work involving the targeted elimination of an individual, so you can probably guess the team's vibe. If you guessed a covert operations team in the Wildstorm universe, then you get a gold star. Jackson Dane is team leader. Dane's team was sent out to raid a cave, but the cave was already raided when they got there. Nothing left except tubes filled with a mysterious gold liquid. Important to note, the team had a lot of remote-controlled weapons on them that happened to start a countdown to detonate when they were inside. So yeah, everything goes so wrong so fast. The tubes get broken, the liquid gets on the team and surrounds them, and then the explosives go off. But it turns out the liquid acted like protective armor because it was Sims. Adding a Sim to someone automatically makes them cooler, but you know what makes them even cooler than that? When they also fight vampires. Where did that come from? I don't know, we've lost the plot a little bit, but I'm not mad about it. Wetworks has been running flying across Eastern Europe, single-handedly preventing a Twilight remake. They lost members along the way, even temporarily stopped their mission, but they regrouped and were called to Utah, of all places. Turns out someone was trying to make a Daemonite vampire hybrid. In the ensuing fight, the Sims all mutated and the Wetworks team started getting new powers and saved the day. Now, you've heard of the Avengers, but turns out they weren't the first Avengers team Nick Fury created. Avengers 1959 were the OGs, and the team was all villains. Earth's mightiest heroes were, I guess, technically named after Earth's biggest headaches. Somehow, I feel betrayed by this info, and I don't really have any personal stake in this game. The 1959 Avengers team was created by Nick Fury at the order of President Eisenhower. Team Constants include Nick Fury as leader, Sabretooth, Kraven the Hunter, Dominic Fortune, Namora, Bloodstone, and Silver Sable. This Avengers team is super interesting to me because, well, I love the vintage aesthetic, but also, Nick, what are you doing? Quite a few of the people on this team are certified menaces to society. I guess they were right for the missions they went on, which was like defeating Red Skull and his Yahtzee with an N Captain America, but Sabretooth? The team's efforts were pretty much focused on defeating various bad guys that belonged to the Yahtzees. Because the Avengers did so much good defeating all those bad guys, Nick pardoned all the past crimes of the team members. Controversial choice, but okay. The team operated in the 1950s but debuted in 2011. Dynamic duo Blue Falcon and Dynomutt of the Scooby-Doo extended universe are criminally underrated. They are literally just a guy and his dog out to save the world. Blue Falcon is a parody of Batman, specifically inspired by Adam West's. He doesn't have any superpowers, but he's so good at what he does, you would never need to know that. Blue Falcon and Dynomutt have appeared in their feature film, Scooby-Doo Mask of the Blue Falcon, among other Scooby-Doo media, including my favorite version in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. In that show, Blue Falcon was Radley Crown, a security guard at Quest Labs with a taste for adventure, love for birds, and his trusty security dog sidekick Reggie. One day a villain broke in and Reggie was fatally wounded. Mr. Crown fought for his dog, and that is how he became the literal crime-stopping machine, Dynomutt. Now, he can create anything from his mechanical body with absolutely no limits. Blue Falcon is this huge, incredibly strong, intelligent man, bit rough around the edges, but you don't really mind. He's got all the gadgets, including a Falcon car and a bird-themed utility belt. The duo has taken on at least 30 guys at once without even breaking a sweat. And finally, the challengers of the unknown are very interesting to me. They were a bunch of normal guys with above-average jobs on a plane that were flying to go be guests on a radio show called Heroes. We had a master of skin diving, a circus daredevil, an Olympic wrestling champion, and a trained jet pilot and war hero. Quite the mix of people. Of course, the plane went down, but the Fab Four survived. After the crash, they all have that like, wow, we almost passed on moment, and decided that they should challenge the unknown together, live life to the fullest. Challenging the unknown is really what these guys did. They were a for-hire service, so they got hired once to open Pandora's box. Pandora's box is something you famously should not open. However, they were offered $1 million, so I get it. These guys start kind of taking on jobs that are too out there for others to handle or just too hard. They worked with the Pentagon of all places. They had created their home base in a mountain. The personification of evil actually came by and blew that up. At a certain point, the team just really did not catch a break. Eventually, there are new team members, a games designer, physicist, NASCAR driver, commercial pilot. What I love about this DC team are the people on the team are people. They had semi-regular jobs and just decided to start conquering challenges despite not receiving any superpowers.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This is for sure the least obscure entry on the list, as I choose to talk about them constantly, and Alpha Flight has been somewhat reinvented in the last few years and changed into an international space force being led by Captain Marvel, but we are talking about the original team. First appearing in X-Men number 120, Alpha Flight was Canada's answer to the Avengers, with members with unique abilities from all over Canada. Unlike most super teams who are always working together, Alpha Flight operated in more of a Mission Impossible, James Bond kind of style, by choosing heroes from their roster and assigning each of them to specific missions that they would handle as individuals and pairs, only coming together as a full team in the case of extreme threats. Despite multiple tries by Marvel to give the team their own ongoing series, Alpha Flight has never quite caught on in the States. Perhaps they are just too specifically Canadian for a readership who tends to prefer American-centric stories, or maybe they just haven't been given the right push into the mainstream. Either way, Alpha Flight remains a team that not a huge amount of readers have heard of, and even fewer have actually read. Although, they did appear in one episode of the classic X-Men cartoon. Small victories. Number 9, ForceWorks. When it was determined that the Avengers' ever-expanding roster should be better divided up across the United States, rather than everyone working out of New York, the West Coast Avengers were formed. This experiment didn't end end up working out, and the team was soon disbanded. In a typically Tony Stark move, Tony Stark decided that he should instead fund and create his own superhero team to help protect the West Coast. The resulting team was ForceWorks. The original team consisted of Iron Man, Spider-Woman, Wonder Man, and US Agent, with Scarlet Witch being chosen as the team leader. The team operated for a while, taking on threats like the Mandarin and Kang the Conqueror, but the team was plagued with internal issues. Despite Scarlet Witch being the team leader, Iron Man was constantly undermining her authority and forcing the team to carry out his personal vendettas. This attitude culminated in him forcing the team to brutally kidnap Hawkeye, which got him booted from the team. ForceWorks carried on without him for a while, but eventually decided to disband, although they were briefly brought back under the leadership of Maria Hill in order to fight the Robot Revolution. ForceWorks is an obscure offshoot of the already relatively obscure West Coast Avengers, however they did serve as the supporting cast for Iron Man's 90s animated series. Number 8. The Outlaws. Not to be confused with the team from DC Comics, Marvel's Outlaws are a group of heroes, all with a criminal past, who are led by Spider-Man and Silver Sable. The group formed when photographic evidence came out implicating Spider-Man in a robbery. Wanting to prove the innocence of the man who had helped them reform, Prowler, Rocket Racer, Will-O-the-Wisp, Paladin, and Sandman all began searching for evidence that would prove the webbed wall crawler's innocence. They discovered that Spidey was actually working for Silver Sable, and that what he had stolen was actually incriminating evidence against a member of the Maggia crime family. Impressed with the group's skills, Silver Sable brought them on as freelancers, and the team would occasionally come together, usually whenever Spider-Man was being framed or something and needed support from outside of the Avengers. Although some of the various members of the team are relatively well-known characters, their team isn't well known, as they come together so rarely and haven't teamed up since 1991. Number 7. Psyforce. When a telepathic CIA agent named Emmett Proudhawk had a vision about 5 young people with psychic abilities being protected by a hawk, he decided to track down the people in his vision and bring them together to become Psyforce. He got most of them together but was killed by a Russian operative. The 5 psychic youths discovered that when they all touched Proudhawk's mystic medallion, it summoned a creature called the Psyhawk, who would help them defeat their enemies. You know, like Captain Planet. The youths worked together to defeat an evil Russian paranormal named Rodstov, and they were chased by members of the CIA, the KGB, and a shadowy organization called the Medusa Web, who eventually brought the kids on as freelance agents. Although they had their own 32-issue series, the fact that this Marvel team has no recognizable superheroes and is based in Earth 148,611 rather than the mainstream Earth 616 universe keeps them pretty obscure. Number 6. Force of July. The first DC entry on this list, Force of July were an Americana-themed group who often found themselves at odds with the Outsiders. The Force answered to the American Security Agency and were tasked with eliminating anyone whose activities were deemed to be subversive to America's interests by any means necessary. Some of the team's members include Lady Liberty, Silent Majority, Sparkler, Mayflower, and their leader, Major Victory. Although they aren't technically villains, their fanatic patriotism prevented them from seeing that they were being manipulated by their handler, who was using them to help his scheme to create a satellite called Project Orwell that would have been used to spy on people using their televisions. This plot was stopped by the Outsiders, and the Force of July later found themselves fighting against the Suicide Squad, who killed Sparkler and Mayflower. The remaining members ended up joining the squad but did not last long on the team's roster. Number 5. The Inferior Five. Coming from Earth 12 in the DC multiverse, this team are the Nepo babies of a team of heroes called the Freedom Brigade. When the Freedom Brigade retired, the heroes encouraged their children to follow in their footsteps, and they started a team dedicated to protecting the people of Megaopolis. Known as the Fearsome Five, the members of this team, Awkward Man, Blimp, Dumb Bunny, and Whitefeather, have somewhat useless and conflicting powers, and although they usually manage to save the day, it is usually a result of dumb luck rather than skill. Their lameness led to the people of Megalopolis calling their champions the Inferior Five, which the team eventually decided to adopt as their official name. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, their world was destroyed, and as a result they were sent to comic book Limbo, which is a realm similar to the Island of Misfit Toys, where characters who are written out of continuity remain until they're brought back into continuity. Number 4. The League of Losers. In the Marvel Universe of Earth 6215, a time-traveling villain from the future named Kronoke used his knowledge of the past to travel back in time to the present with an army and kill all of Earth's mightiest heroes. Fortunately, the records he was working off of did not include any reference to these C-list Marvel characters because none of them had ever done anything that was worthy of note. Darkhawk, Speedball, Dagger, Thunder, Terror, X-23, Gravity, and Sleepwalker were thus able to take on Chrono and travel back to before the villain had stolen his time travel tech and stop him. Although this stranded the team in the future, it also created a divergent timeline known as Earth 2992, where the villain's scheme was never an issue. Wow, time travel can be such a pain to explain. Number 3, Section 8. One of the strangest teams in the DC universe, Section 8 is a group of what I will very generously call heroes who operate out of Gotham City. Each member of the team is more bizarre than the last, so buckle up. Shakes is a schizophrenic with a speech impediment. Jean de Baton Baton is a stereotypical Frenchman who hits people with a baton. Defenestrator is a massive former Arkham inmate who carries around a window to smash over his enemies' heads. Flemgem spits massive amounts of snot at his enemies in order to blind them. Bueno Excelente is just some guy who sneaks up on his enemies and then essays them. Dog Welder is a crazy person who welds dogs to people's faces, and Friendly Fire is a hero who can shoot energy beams but is incapable of hitting anything he aims at, usually hitting his teammates instead. They are led by Sixpack, an alcoholic who pees himself and then attacks people with a beer bottle. Shockingly, this team has not gotten a big budget movie, and all of them were killed after an encounter with the mini-angled ones, with the exception of Sixpack, who suddenly manifested reality-warping powers to defeat the villains and save the world. Number 2, the Neo Knights. After having great success publishing comic books based on Hasbro's line of G.I. Joe toys, the two companies collaborated again to create the series that would give much needed backstory for Hasbro's new line of toys, the Transformers. A lot of the Transformers mythology came from these comics, but due to the rights of certain characters remaining with the comic book company, not all of the elements were brought over for the television series or subsequent films. One of these elements is the superhero team, the Neo Knights. When the Autobots returned to space, leaving no one to protect their longtime ally, GB Blackrock, he decided to bring together a team of superpowered humans in order to fight any Decepticons that caused trouble on Earth. The members are Circuit Breaker, a woman who was paralyzed in an encounter with the Transformers and has developed a special suit that allows her to walk as well as fly and shoot repulsor beams. Also on the team are Thunder Punch, a man who can enlarge his feet and hands and punch with heightened strength, Rapture, a woman who can cause any sentient being to shut down and enter an elaborate fantasy, and Dynamo, who could channel the planet's latent energies. They are extremely obscure, only showing up in the original US and UK Transformers comics, and due to Hasbro having the rights for most of the Transformers and Marvel owning the rights to this team, they are likely to remain so for quite some time. Number 1, the Forgotten Heroes. They may have more appearances than some of the other teams on this list, and some of their members are relatively well known, but with a name like the Forgotten Heroes, how could they not end up on the top spot for this list? The team consists of a bunch of DC heroes who all stumbled upon ancient golden pyramids. When the heroes tried to report what they had found, the US government disavowed them and ruined each of their reputations to discredit them. Immortal Man brought all the heroes together and filled them in that the pyramids were part of a scheme by Vandal Savage to kill Superman. They formed a team together and teamed up with the Man of Steel to stop Vandal's plot. The team lives up to its name with members like Atomic Knight, Ballistic Congo Bill, Cave Carson, Dolphin, The Ray, Vigilante, and Resurrection Man, as well as a few slightly more well-known heroes such as Rip Hunter, Animal Man, and Rick Flag.
And at 10, Legion of Super Pets. Okay, look, I know they had an animated movie and stuff, but like, come on. The Legion of Super Pets was a remarkable team comprised of extraordinary animal companions, okay? Among its members were Crypto the Super Dog, Streaky the Super Cat, and the inclusion of Wizzy. In pursuit of their ambitious plan to relocate Earth to their solar system, the otherworldly beings known as the Brain Globes of Rambat devised a strategy that hinged on defeating Superboy. Failing to gain control over him, they resorted to summoning Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, and Saturn Girl from the future, who were members of the Legion of Superheroes. Under the mental command of the Brain Globes, this trio was compelled to capture Superboy, and then once he was subdued, the Brain Globes relinquished their hold over the Legionnaires. Recognizing that their power did not extend to animals though, the Legionnaires gathered Crypto, Streaky, Beepo, which was like from Superman's present, and Comet the Super Horse to confront their extraterrestrial adversaries. With the combined efforts of the pets, they triumphed over those and subsequently honored as the Legion of Super Pets, which was an animal division of the Legion of Superheroes. And then each pet was returned to their respective time periods, but like, come on, dude, what the hell? Who thought of this this storyline. In at 9, X-Babies. The original X-Babies were a youthful incarnation of the X-Men, as you could probably guess, consisting of Nightcrawler, Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Shadowcat, Magneto, Longshot, and Psylocke. Mojo, the mastermind behind their de-aging, who is not a Powerpuff Girls villain, as I've been informed, had intended to dispose of them, but they were rescued by the New Mutants. During the X-Men's absence, in the Fall of Mutants event, Mojo sought to create replacement teams using Neoplasm, experimenting with various iterations such as gender-swapped and animal versions, but no more Legion of Super X animals here. But eventually, the X-Babies came into existence. However, Mojo soon deemed them a failed experiment and planned to eliminate them. Seizing that opportunity though, the X-Babies escaped, taking the pilot Ricochet Rita with them. Seeking refuge, the group found sanctuary within Mojo's crossover house, and in a fear of confrontation, they escaped to Earth 616. Unfortunately though, Rita was captured during their fight and covertly transformed into the agent set on a mission to apprehend the X-Babies. But yes, in the Mojo-verse, there is a team of X-Men babies. Most of these are like a good dumb. It's like, it's dumb, but it's also good, but some the other ones are just like, why? And at 8, the Inferior 5. The Inferior 5 is basically DC making fun of the Fantastic Four, and you can trace their lineage back to the esteemed Freedom Brigade, a team of masked adventurers hailing from an alternate Earth, which is Earth 12, existing prior to the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Following the retirement of the brigade, their children were reluctantly coerced into carrying on their legacy and utilizing their inherited abilities and powers. However, their commitment to the superhero vocation was lackluster at best. For almost 2 decades, Megalopolis enjoyed a period of peace, thanks to the Freedom Brigade's successful eradication of crime. But this tranquility was shattered when a new villain emerged, known as Dr. Gruesome. Mayor Boswell, faced with this newfound threat, called upon the retired members for assistance, but it was during this time that Patriot and Lady Liberty saw an opportunity to rally their former comrades and encourage their children to do their work for them. Taking up residence in the former headquarters of the Freedom Brigade, the 5 fledgling heroes embarked on a challenging journey to defeat Dr. Gruesome, albeit relying heavily on circumstance. Despite their initial victory, they soon discovered that their individual skills clashed and rendered them a remarkably ineffective team. So yeah, there you go. That's DC making fun of the Fantastic Four, just with an extra person. That's why it failed, because they had that one more person. In at 7, Great Lakes Avengers. Inspired by his newfound power to defy death, Craig Hollis assumed the mantle of Mr. Immortal and embarked on a crusade against crime. Recognizing the advantages of having a team by his side, he placed an advertisement seeking individuals of action. Yes, this dude made an ad for a superhero team. Gathering at a local YMCA, I'm not even joking, Mr. Immortal was joined by Big Bertha, Dr. Sore, Doorman, Flatman, and Leather Boy, which just sounds like my Saturday nights. Together, they established themselves as the Great Lakes Avengers, serving as a sister team to the West Coast Avengers and the Avengers of the East Coast. Taking on various criminal menaces, the Great Lakes Avengers swiftly garnered the attention of Hawkeye and Mockingbird, who were intrigued. The duo journeyed to Wisconsin to investigate these imposter Avengers. However, upon discovering that the team was comprised of an unconventional set of heroes, Hawkeye and Mockingbird took it upon themselves to provide guidance and training. These guys were trained by Hawkeye, the guy with a bow and nothing else. In the early days, the team relied heavily on the money that Ashley Crawford, Big Bertha, was making from modeling to finance their HQ, but yeah, they also made use of her private jet for transportation. God, this whole thing has to be a joke, right? Doorman, Leather Boy. In at 6, the Justice League of Antarctica. The Injustice League was a group of bumbling villains who found themselves unintentionally regarded as heroes. Initially formed by Major Disaster as a counter-strike force against the newly internationalized Justice League, they clashed briefly with the JLI, but were swiftly defeated. Following their defeat, the Injustice League disbanded, with each member going their separate ways. Through a stroke of luck though, the media mistakenly portrayed them as champions of justice justice, applauding their supposed reformation. This unexpected turn of events fueled Major Disaster's ambitions, leading him to appeal to Maxwell Lord, the liaison of the Justice League International. Recognizing the potential value in monitoring these comically inept individuals, Lord extended an invitation for them to join the Justice League Antarctica branch, with the primary aim of giving the somewhat dim-witted Nort a purpose. Lord then appointed him as the leader of the team. Under Nort's guidance, the Injustice League embarked on their new role in Antarctica, providing an opportunity for Lord and the Justice League to keep a watchful eye on these unlikely group of characters. But you know what? At least they'll save Happy Feet. Penguins are in Antarctica, right? Or is it that they aren't in Antarctica? I have no idea. Halfway through, in at number 5, Grandpa. Not even joking. Limited information is available about the Global Reaction Agency for Mysterious Paranormal Activity, aka GRAMPA, which was just a great acronym, guys. Good job. The organization operates with a small number of field agents stationed worldwide, dedicated to the noble task of saving the world from paranormal stuff. While GRAMPA is recognized by governments around the globe, it may not always command the respect it deserves. In one instance, a member of the Japanese self-defense forces considered 2 Grandpa agents to be a more dangerous threat than Terminus himself. In the aftermath of the secret invasion, Grandpa sought the assistance of the mighty Avengers, led by Henry Pym, to address international crises, but in doing so, the agency granted the team immunity from prosecution by Hammer, thereby enabling them to act freely in the face of global emergencies, like paranormal ones, you know, like the Paranormal Activity movies? Yeah, they're all over that. In at 4, Super Buddies. The Super Buddies, a reassembled team of former Justice League International members who were brought together by Maxwell Lord as his robot companion Elron, are just interesting at best. The roster consists of Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Fire, the Elongated Man, his wife Sue, and Captain Atom. Although they once fought side by side, the Super Buddies struggled to find harmony within their ranks. Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, formerly known as the comedic duo Abbott and Costello of the JLI, now engaged in constant arguments, each futilely attempting to prove their own maturity. Unfortunately, their efforts go largely unnoticed because Booster Gold and Ralph Dibny face a lack of credibility among their peers, a fact that no one hesitates to point out. Fire, on the other hand, runs a website called blazingfire.com, where she offers paid downloads of images of herself. It's basically the site that shall not be named, but for a superhero. It's a whole thing, okay? Then adding to the mix, Fire convinces Sue that Ralph is below her level of attractiveness, causing Ralph to develop self-conscious behavior, when the dude can literally shape himself into whoever he wants. So I don't understand that. He can literally just give himself a couple extra inches in height and he'd be fine. But you know what? It's a thing. The fact that all of this is happening is just so dumb. I respect it though. And at 3, Chess Set. The Chess Set organization made a sinister attempt to auction off the remains of Auric and Silver, former members of Gamma Flight, along with the body of a civilian scientist. These individuals had undergone experiments by the Sphinx and his agents in their pursuit of superhuman abilities, and the scientist, who claimed to have gained powers from these corpses, had stolen them and put them up for auction under the Chess Set organization. Alpha Flight, the successor to Gamma Flight, along with the assistance of Spider-Man, tracked down the location of the auction, and at the event, the enigmatic Brass Bishop revealed that the energies from the Sphinx's experiments had become infused with the bodies of the siblings and the scientists. They ended up forming like one massive entity during a fight, but then the new entity, formed by Vengeance, sought to eliminate the Chess Set and take revenge. However, Guardian, the leader of Alpha Fight, appealed to that being's sense of honor and persuaded it that killing Chess Set would not honor memories. But you know what? These guys are heroes for making money in this world, okay? They're lifting themselves up by their bootstraps, and I respect it. But ultimately, in at number 2, Bizarro League. Okay, I get that it's Bizarro, but since it is Bizarro, they are the opposite of what they are, and since you're trying to see them as villains, that means that they're heroes, okay? When Bizarro 3 inadvertently absorbed radiation from a blue sun, he gained the ability to duplicate himself and create other Bizarro life forms resembling individuals from Earth. Utilizing this ability, he populated a cuboid planet in the blue star solar system known as Bizarro World. These replicas, among other numerous duplicates, he created like a Bizarro version of the Justice League. However, the inhabitants of Bizarro World eventually grew disoriented with Bizarro 3's rule, leading a rebellion against him. In this moment, Bizarro 3's friends from the Justice League intervened to assist him, encased within their own hyperbolic chamber headquarters. It's all Bizarro versions. There's Bizarro Superman, Bizarro Flash. There's even a Bizarro Doomsday that they're fighting. It's a whole thing. They're still kind of heroes, and I respect them, kind of. And finally, in number 1, Alpha Fight. Alpha Fight is basically just Canada's version of the Avengers. It's the foremost team of superheroes, established and operated by the Canadian government through Department H, whatever that is. They were formed because of the Superpowers Registration Act in Parliament, which mandated the employment of all superpowered individuals, including mutants, by the government. It's meant to just be the freaking Avengers, but Canadian. I find that offensive. We should have something better. Like the Mounties. Yeah, that's right.
Back in 2009, Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four takes a little trip to the inhuman city of Atalan, searching for the Infinity Gems. The massive teleporting inhuman bulldog Lockjaw happens to stumble on the Mind Gem and is granted telepathy. Using this telepathy to read Mr. Fantastic's mind, he decides to use his other power to go and round up the other gems. Along the way, Lockjaw runs into Hairball the cat belonging to Speedball, the dragon Lockheed, the companion of Kitty Pryde, Redwing, Falcon's pet Falcon, Throg, a frog with the powers of Thor, Zabu, the saber-toothed tiger ally of the Savage Lands Khazar, and Miss Lion, May Parker's dog. Despite the fact that this team are literally just super pets, they decide to team up as the Pet Avengers, and they go off to assemble the Infinity Gems as part of a 4-part limited series. A more recent Earth 616 version of the team from 2021 consisted of Lockjaw, Throg, and Lockheed still, but this time accompanied by Doctor Strange's ghost dog Bats, and Hugin and Munin, the Ravens of Thor, formerly belonging to Odin.
This X-Men team and roster, the Extreme X-Men, marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran until 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as leader, who is soon going to be the leader of the X-Men again, or a X-Men team, which, you know, I'm all about because I love Rogue. The original Extreme X-Men roster features Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added into the mix throughout the series. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats, as happens when you're an X-Men team.
There have been several incarnations of the Outsiders in DC Comics, and most have been Batman or Batman family related, with one team even being led by Nightwing. The first ever version of the team came in 1983 after Batman gained a rather uncomfortable standing with the Justice League. The team had some notable moments, particularly because of its new characters like Katana and Geoforce. Batman and the Justice League would patch things up, and so he left the team to continue operating without him. During that time, they were operating in Markovia in order to receive funding and then moved to Los Angeles before they reunited with Batman and gained access to a Los Angeles Batcave. The last version of the team came following Batman Rip in 2008, where Alfred put together the team with each member representing a part of Batman's legacy, but obviously Batman actually never really bites the dust permanently, so that didn't really last.
Cape Sync is a superhero team, or really a superhero agency I guess I should say, from the same world as Invincible. In fact, as early on as issue number 8 of the Invincible series, you can see some of their members featured in the background. Not only that, but they also ended up getting their own spin-off comic as well. Although I believe it only lasted 3 issues total. It was a miniseries. You know, that's how it goes sometimes. Though there were Cape Sync backup stories I believe in certain issues of Invincible as well, so if you really like it, you can also check those out, which also told the team's story. The miniseries centered initially around Bolt, who welcomes a new recruit to the team as his partner. The team is more like a business and kind of seems to operate kind of like a superpowered police station or a police office. People even get paid and everything. Kid Thor is the new kid in town who joins up with Bolt. Bolt, we learn initially wanted his name to be Black Samson, but obviously that name was already taken by the Guardians of the Globe members, so alas, it was unavailable when he joined up with Cape Sync, and that's why he's Bolt.
The team known as Force Works was formed by Iron Man, who had left the Avengers due to a dispute as to the role of superhumans. Force Works maintained the outlook that rather than X-Men being a reactionary force, they should try to preempt both natural and man-made disasters. The team was initially composed of Iron Man, US Agent, Spider-Woman, Julian Carpenter, Scarlet Witch, and Wonder Man, which in my opinion is such an interesting group of heroes. But by the end of their first mission, Wonder Man was thought to be deceased at the hands of the invading Kree, and shortly after the alien Sentry took his place, only to be completely forgotten when the team disbanded. The team fought in several skirmishes, but really only lasted about 2 years. The characters were mainly reabsorbed into the ranks of the Avengers afterwards.
I like to refer to this next one as the other XSE team. This team also spiraled out of a team that we talked about previously on this list, Extreme X-Men. XSE here stands for the Extreme Sanctions Executive. Similar to the original XSE that Bishop was a part of in the future, or in his future, this team is also like a military police force, meant to maintain and in some cases enforce peace is kept between mutants and humans. Storm was asked to create the team by the United Nations and eventually would increase its numbers by recruiting the rest of her X-Men, making this another government-sanctioned mutant team, like X-Factor was originally. Team members have included Bishop, Cannonball, Magma, Rachel Summers, Psylocke, Rogue, Sage, Wolverine, X-23, and Gambit. Now that's a team.
Look, even though the book was cancelled in 1978 after a mere 17 issues, and many people, including the heroes on the team, look at it as an embarrassment, the Champions roster was actually pretty darn capable. With a team of 2 founding X-Men, Iceman and Angel, combined with heavy hitters Hercules, the Spirit of Vengeance Ghost Rider, and being led by Natasha Romanoff Black Widow, the Champions were aptly named and could kick some serious butt when given the opportunity. The team fought familiar villains like Titanium Man and the Griffin, but even began to develop their own rogues gallery with new villains such as Rampage and Swarm, and they even got an addition to the team in the form of Black Goliath before the book was cancelled. The team was intended to reform in 2007, only they were forced to rename as The Order since Marvel had lost the trademark for the Champions over the years.
You've heard of Green Lanterns, maybe you've even heard of Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns or even Black Lanterns, but how about Blue Lanterns? Yeah, that's a color too. Blue Lanterns have only made a few appearances in the new continuity, and even before that, during the New Earth days of DC, they weren't necessarily the most frequent to appear. Mainly, I feel like people just know Green Lanterns, whose color of course represents willpower. To be a Green Lantern, you must be strong in will. So, what's blue about? What's the whole blue thing? To be a Blue Lantern, you must be full of hope. So beautiful. I feel like I could be a Blue Lantern, honestly. If Green Lanterns are like the intergalactic police, Blue Lanterns are like therapists or peacekeepers or priests maybe. They have long been allies to the Green Lanterns, and their powers actually provide a boost to fellow Green Lanterns when they're nearby. Pretty cute. This is because their whole focus is of course on belief and hope, having faith in those around them. As such, many of their names start with a title like Saint, Sister, or Brother. I'd definitely be Sister. Sister Amanda, Blue Lantern. Sister McKnight.
Kind of like the Champions, DC's Detroit League is another team that gets a real bad rap, but actually has a pretty stacked roster when you take a closer inspection. After Aquaman, a charter member of the original Justice League, decided that the Justice League members were too interested in their own individual problems to be part of an effective team, he used his position to disband the team and establish the Detroit League. This new team, with half old-timers and half newbies, was largely used to add some diversity to the DC heroic lineup. Whether it achieved that or not is up to the reader. Made up of League mainstays like Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Zatanna, and Elongated Man, along with newbies like Vibe, Gypsy, Vixen, and Commander Steel, it's often considered the worst roster of the team, but if you actually look at the roster and do some critical thinking, you'll find that it's very powerful indeed. Martian Manhunter and Zatanna alone are absolute powerhouses. Despite the jokes, Aquaman or even Commander Steel both make really effective tanks, and the rest of the team is quite capable in a variation of different situations.
The God Squad is about as powerful as they sound, but they still remain one of the lesser known teams in the Marvel Universe. The team was originally assembled by the Council of Godheads, and first came together during the events of Secret Invasion. The team first formed in the Incredible Hercules issue number 117 in 2008. The original roster included Adam the Demogorge, Snowbird, the Eternal Ajax, and Amatsu Mikaboshi, later known as, of course, the Chaos King. The roster would go on to include such impressive members as Silver Surfer, Galactus, Circe, Thor, Amadeus Cho, and of course, Hercules himself.